Thank you. Su Hao from China Proper University at Beijing. I do appreciate your points in your speech on the enhancing the developing relation between China and the United States. And we are already discussing quite a lot of the maritime security issues in this today. So I'm curious about your definition about the common ground and the sharing interest between China and the United States in terms of the maritime security. Thank you.
I think common ground between the United States is a relationship based, and I know that some of this sounds like a boilerplate, but I think it's a relationship based on mutual respect, on mutual appreciation for the role that both our countries can play on the world stage, a commitment to helping resolve the world's disputes and the situations that we find arising throughout the world. But I also think that our relationship is also based, as it is with every other country, on certain aspects of human rights. And our hope at the time of the normalization of relations between our two countries, I happen to be one of the few remaining living Americans that was at the Great Hall of the People in the ceremony of the normalization of relations between our two countries. And I have to tell you very frankly, we had expected greater progress in some areas towards human rights and democratization. So I think that the world, not just the United States, has every right to expect progress in some of those areas. One of the officials of the Chinese government was here recently, and I asked them when they were going to allow Twitter in their country. I didn't get an answer. So I think we need to understand that the success of our relations will also, to some degree, be affected by the fundamentals of human rights, progress on certain aspects of democratization and freedom. And I repeat, do not foresee a scenario where the United States and China would have some kind of conflict, whether it be a cold conflict or a warm one. There's no possibility in my view of that. But I do think that our relations, to some degree, must be impacted by certain internal aspects in your country. And may I finally just categorically state that I think that the Arab Spring is misnamed in that I believe that this movement that we are seeing throughout the world is not confined to the Arab world. And so, but again, I want to emphasize every president, whether they be Republican or Democrat, and every administration that I could envision is committed to good and better relations between the United States and China, and is not interested in confrontation. But at the same time, I believe Republican and Democrat administration will continue its advocacy for democracy, human rights, and all of the things that has characterized American exceptionalism. Time for one more question? Yeah, two more if you like. Later.
Thank you, Senator McCain. My name is Bingyu. I'm with Phoenix TV China. My question is, you mentioned the multilateral way to solve the disputes. Could you be more specific on who should take the initiative to make the multilateral discussion? And also, you made several suggestions to the U.S. what the U.S. should do. Could you also advise, like, what should China do? Thank you.
In Singapore, I heard the speech given by the Chinese defense minister given in Singapore at the Shangri-La conference, and I was very encouraged by a lot of the things that he had to say, both in his speech and during the question and answer period. I don't think there's any doubt that ASEAN has turned into a very important organization. And I believe that ASEAN could play a key role. It's got all of the infrastructure there to be a vehicle to help move these relationships along and discussions between the affected countries of the South China Sea. So I would say that ASEAN is a very convenient and appropriate place to resolve differences amongst members, and also for China to be a part of discussions with ASEAN. Could I do one more? Yes. And do you want to follow up? Go ahead. I hope that the words of the Chinese defense minister, which were, I think, very powerful. This was a very important platform from which he spoke. That's a very prestigious situation. And I hope that his words about willingness to sit down and talk with other affected nations in the South China Sea will come to fruition. I hope that his words that they are not interested, that China is not interested in hegemony in the South China Sea, that they are, all of his speech, frankly, to me, were encouraging as a matter of national policy of China as he articulated. What I worry about is, frankly, is the assertion somehow that it will be China that decides the fate and the future of the South China Sea rather than all of the affected nations in the region. I would like to see that statement of national policy by China.
Thank you. I'm Jean Nguyen with Voice of Vietnamese Americans. First, I would like to sincerely thank Senator John McCain for the time that you served in Vietnam. And I'd like to sincerely thank your position today, your platform that you said you would side with Senator Jim Webb from the Democratic Party on the same position toward the Southeast Asian Sea. I would like to propose that we call it the Southeast Asian Sea. And I would also like to thank you.
That's a good idea.
Thank you
Words matter,
from all the Asian nations, ASEAN nations. Thank you, Senator. I would like to also thank you for making the human rights issues the main important points between the U.S. and China dialogue on behalf of all the Chinese people and all the Southeast Asian people and Asian peoples as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me...
I would like to...
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Ask my questions.
Oh, good.
Would you, in the view that the Republican Party may win the elections in 2012, to promise to keep your position today, to support the Asian nations in the dialogue to promote security, peaceful development, human rights, and multilateral dialogues with China for the sake of international peace? Would you advocate for the UNCLOS at Congress to be passed soon? And would you advocate for a sustainable peace in Southeast Asian Sea, as if it is a very important part of global security and peace? Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you for those kind words. I'm glad we called on you. First of all, let me say that, and I want to be clear, human rights is a part of United States policy. It is not the only part. Let me make it very clear. But it is one of a number of principles that the United States adheres to in the conduct of its foreign policy and national security policy. Now, I'm pleased at the progress that has been made in Vietnam, but I have to give you some straight talk. There has got to be, in Vietnam, addressing the corruption. This ship building situation in Haiphong is an embarrassment to the country because it's an example of corruption. And I would like to point out that the treatment of minorities in Vietnam has not been at the level that it should be, in my view. And so I think progress still needs to be made. And I want to emphasize again, human rights is not the only aspect of American national security policy, but it is a part of it. And our interests are our values, and our values are our interests. Let me just say again about the Republican Party. I may, in my remarks that I written, my prepared remarks, I mentioned that I am worried. I am worried about a war-weary America that has now some involvement in 3 wars, although not as much as I had wanted. In Libya, I wanted us to use more American air power, but that's another subject for another day. But they are war-weary. We are in an unsustainable fiscal situation. So I understand why the United States citizens and my fellow citizens in Arizona who are very hard hit by this economic recession are tempted to say, look, stop spending all this money overseas. Stop our involvement. We don't need any more ships or airplanes or tanks, whatever. And it's the job of the President of the United States and other respected leaders to explain to the American people why it's important. Why, as Secretary Gates said the other day, we cannot withdraw to Fortress America. That was Secretary Gates's comment the other day. And the consequences of our failure to engage we have seen before in history. We cannot repeat the lessons of history, otherwise we are doomed to repeat them. And the reason why I'm here, and the reason why this conference is so important, is because the historic shift of the world's economy from Europe, America to Asia. It's a fact. And so our emphasis and our interest in Asia have to be dramatically increased. And we also need to recognize the major role that the world's emerging superpower, China, is going to play. And we're still feeling our way forward in our relations with China. But I want to emphasize again, I do not see confrontation between the United States and China, which means that we will have our differences and we will have serious differences from time to time, but not to the point where it's not in the interest of both countries to have a meaningful and important relationship for the good of all mankind. I want to thank you again for being here tonight, and I want to thank all of our friends from around the world, and I hope you do spend a lot of money while you are here. Thank you very much.